أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الأطيبين الأنجبين بهم نتولى ومن أعدائهم نتبرأ إلى الله اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توغا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. This is Surat al-Hujurat and the 49th surah of the Holy Quran, and the other name given to this surah is Surat al-Akhlaq, wherein so many rules and etiquettes of manners have been mentioned. It started with the ayah لا تقدموا بين يدي الله ورسوله, O you who believe, do not go ahead, do not step forward, then Allah and His Rasul do not precede to them. And then the next ayah said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tarfa'u aswatakum, don't raise your voices over the voice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then it said that if you do that, your actions will be lost. And then it said in the next ayah that when you want to address the Prophet, don't yell, don't shout at him. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُنَادُونَكَ مِنْ وَرَاءِ الْحُجُرَاتِ أَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ. And all these people who come and yell and call and shout at you, they are those who don't understand. Now the other ayah, it said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu in ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in fatabayyanu, that O you who believe, if a fasiq comes to you with some news, verify that news first. So these were all these instructions given to the mu'mineen as to how they should be dealing and interacting in the society of mu'mineen. Now today it's quite an important subject that is going to be discussed, an important topic, and that is ayah number 9. States, وَإِن طَائِفَتَانِ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ اقْتَتَلُوا فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا, which means that if two groups of people of the mu'mineen, of the faithful, they fight one another, so your task is make peace between them. فَإِن بَغَتْ إِحْدَاهُمَا عَلَى الْأُخْرَى فَقَاتِلُوا الَّتِي تَبْغِي حَتَّى تَفِيءَ إِلَى أَمْرِ اللَّهِ. But if one party of them aggresses another, then fight the one which aggresses until it returns to Allah's ordinance. فَإِن فَاءَتْ فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا بِالْعَدْلِ. And then if it returns, make peace between them fairly. وَأَقْسِطُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُقْسِطِينَ. And do justice between them, and indeed Allah, He loves the just. So beautiful instructions have been mentioned over here. So it starts with when there is a dispute between two. So this applies at a larger scale, at a wider scale, to disputes between families, between tribes, between countries, between individuals, between institutions, whatever that can be. وَإِن طَائِفَتَانِ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. So if two groups of people fight one another, so you can't just sit back, relax, and then watch as a spectator. You have to move ahead. And it is one of those mandatory wajib commands that we have to abide by. Now there are quite a few points that we learn from this beautiful ayah, and says so far throughout this surah various types of encounters, dealings were discussed. Dealing with God and the messenger, that don't overtake, don't precede, and then dealing with the prophet, politeness, not raising your voice was mentioned, and then dealing with the fusaq. Fusaq, it's the plural of fasiq, those people who, the fasaqa, the wrongdoers. So fasiq is someone who is a believer, but he has sins on him, or he has disobedience on his account. So how you deal with these people was mentioned, and then dealing with a suppressing, or the insurgents or the oppressors, how you deal with them, with these oppressors, dealing with love, brotherhood, and with the, that is how you believe with you deal with the believers was mentioned. Hadith says that help your brother in faith. Now this one, it's a little bit, we have to try and understand. It says that help your brother in faith, be he a zalim or be he a mazloom. In both cases you help him. So be he an oppressor or be he an oppressed. If he is oppressed, help him get his rights. If he is an oppressor, guide him so that he prevents his oppression. Not that help him oppress. Help him so that he puts away that oppression. So the Prophet, he says, you help your brother in faith, be he a zalim or be he a mazloom. Now Muslims, they must have strong organizations, a government, a power, system, education, mobilization, propaganda, and every ability. Otherwise it is not possible to practice this verse in this day and age. So you have to be strong, you have to be able, for you to be able to apply this wisdom and this justice. So that is to suppress the international insurgents with all the advances in science, technology, and communication. We have to be strong ourselves. Now the messages that we get from this ayah, there are dozens of lessons can be learned from this verse, some of which will be mentioned here. And although faith, it does not prevent disputes and fights, striving among believers, it's like a spark, not a current. And then it is whatever this dispute, even when it takes place in families, between spouses, between family members, or in communities, among the centers, among the tribes, so that is a short-term dispute. It will not be permanent, and it will come to an end sooner or later. Because the ayah, it said that iqtatalu. Iqtatalu indicates that the emergence of a conflict, it is not permanent. So iqtatalu, if something ignites between them, so it means that it didn't exist, now it came into existence, you have to put it off so that it's removed. So the word has been used as iqtatalu, which means that it is not permanent, it is short term. And where it is permanent, he should have said yaqtatilun, means that it is something which is an ongoing dispute. So disputes among the mu'mineen, among the spouses, among the family, these are short term, just like that a storm in a teacup. That storm doesn't last for long. Now, adab, respect and etiquettes, it tells us not to attribute negative and ugly issues directly to our audience. That is what is being taught to us in this ayah. For example, if the children, they do bad, or they are doing some kind of wrong, so here you don't barge at them and you don't magnify and bring up that sin, the wrong that they are doing. So you have to put it in a way that is not attributed to them. So we put it in a way like, for example, good kids, they don't lie. Good kids, they offer their prayers, something like that. So, and if two tribes of you, So over here also, if the two tribes, there is a dispute over there, the Almighty says iqtatalu, says if two tribes there is a dispute in them, there is a fight between them. Doesn't identify and focus and address at a specific tribe. That is the adab that is taught to us here, that when you deal with these cases, you don't barge at them, you don't address them in that way. Now the nature of war, it involves everyone and is not restricted with just the two parties involved. So the word iqtatalu that is mentioned in this ayah, it is in the plural form. So even if there's a dispute between two people, you see that there are so many they get involved. So although it's between the two, but others they get involved in it, so that's the plural. So it doesn't identify and say iqtatala. Iqtatala is for the two. So Muslims, they are committed and responsible. If a conflict emerges among themselves, Islam forbids them from being careless. So what do? This ayah says, فَأَصْلِحُوا. You have to step forward and try to put off that dispute, so that reconciliation takes place. Now the other message that we get from this ayah is that rise up quickly, don't delay. Help them reconcile and establish peace among Muslims. Now the letter fa that we have here, فَأَصْلِحُوا. Fa means rush, quick, don't delay. So in Islam, in all of these good deeds, we have this hayya ala khayr al-amal. Hayya means rush, quick. So if there is a dispute, so putting off that dispute is good. So you have to rush to putting off that dispute. Because dispute, it's indecency, it's negativity. The longer it lasts, the worse and the uglier it becomes. So as soon as something has ignited, quickly put it off, try to extinguish it. So فَأَصْلِحُوا, be quick in putting it off. And if one of the two groups engages in rebellion, the entire Muslim Ummah must mobilize against it immediately. Says فَإِن بَغَتْ. So one of them has been rebellious over here. So فَإِن بَغَتْ, one of them, فَقَاتِلُوا الَّتِي تَبْغِي. So what you do is that all of you fight him who is the oppressor. So in order to establish or maintain peace and justice, if necessary, the rebellious Muslims must be killed and sacrificed. Yes, rebellious blood is worthless in Islam, and according to this ayah, says فَإِن بَغَتْ فَقَاتِلُوا. So if you see that one of them is rebellious and is trespassing, فَقَاتِلُوا, so you get rid of him. So violence must be used against violence. فَإِن بَغَتْ فَقَاتِلُوا. So if one of them is being rebellious, so you fight. Now in the Islamic system, a rebel should not be given time and opportunity. So in suppressing rebellion, we must not dodge or neglect. Says فَقَاتِلُوا, straightforward, you just fight him. The letter fa, again over here, it's a sign of acceleration. That is, you have to be quick in making this decision. In suppressing the rebellion, we should have nothing to do with his family, his wife and children, and deal only with that one person who is causing this chaos and nuisance. So here the ayah says, فَقَاتِلُوا الَّتِي تَبْغِي. That is, you fight that person, that one, that individual who is being rebellious. Only him, no one else. Now we can see this in the seerah of Ma'asumin, like for example Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali alayhi salam, when he is hit by Ibn Muljam, then that wasiyat to Imam Mujtaba, he says that you get hold of him, you take care of him, feed him, give him drink. I can see him how nervous he is, how devastated he is. And Hassan, if I survive from this wound, I know what to do. And if I die, you being the heir and the waris, he struck me once, you will strike him once. If he dies with that one strike, that's it. If he doesn't, you will let him go, because that qisas is 1 to 1, not more than that. So it's a tooth for a tooth, a strike for a strike. فَقَاتِلُ الَّتِي تَبْغِي. Now, to have no conditions and considerations in suppressing rebellion, be he known to you from among you, or be he a stranger, whoever he is, فَقَاتِلُ الَّتِي تَبْغِي, you fight him who is rebellious. Now, the uprising of Muslims is sacred. Said hatta tafi'a ila, until that person, the rebellious person, he returns to God. He repents and he returns. So this uprising of a group of mu'mineen to settle this dispute or to put away this rebellion, this is sacred. So how long do you do that? Hatta tafi'a ila Allah, until he returns to Allah. Now the period of struggle is until reaching the goal. So how much do you fight this zalim? Says until he is made to sit back. He returns, he repents. Hatta tafi'a ila amrillah, until he returns to the ordinance of Allah. And there is no specific time, month, date. It is like the time a patient, he goes to see the doctor and the doctor gives him some medication. So he should continue with that medication until he recovers. So you also fight that zalim until he sits back in his place. So in suppressing rebellion, there is no personal, ethnical or any kind of a show-off or any venomous goal that you may be having. In fact, just one goal, and that is that rebellion is to return to the path of Allah, hatta tafi'a ila amrillah. Now for a ceasefire, the beginning of the rebellious return to the path of truth is sufficient. The moment you see that he is returning, that's it. You just leave him and he will come back and he will settle back. Because the condition for giving him up is nothing. We don't have 100% that you see him, that he returns 100% and only then you stop fighting. No. The moment you see that there are signs of repentance in him, indication is there that he is returning, that dispute is going to be put off, that's it. Or if you are mediating between two people and you see one of them, he has shown you some indication and signs that he is ready to repent and return, for example in these family matters, so here that's it. You just walk away. You've done your duty and you don't go more than that. Now in the conflict where the aggressor is not known, there should be an attempt to extinguish the fitna, the dispute, and make peace. فَأَصْلِحُوا. But in the next stage, when he is recognized and the aggressor has been identified, the suppression of fitna and the creation of peace must also be in that direction, defending the oppressed and seeking the right from the oppressor. So here you say that فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا بِالْعَدْلِ. Now that you've identified who the wrongdoer is between the two parties, one of them, whoever is the rebellious one or the bad guy, so you put him in his place and then you install justice between the two and then you move away. The duties of Muslims also, they differ in different circumstances. Sometimes it is a reform and sometimes it is a war. And in this verse, both of them have been mentioned. Allah mentions فَأَصْلِحُوا twice and then says اقْتَتَلُوا also twice. So sulh meaning that making peace between the two, and then fighting the oppressor also has been mentioned twice. Making peace between the two also has been mentioned. So in the reconciliation between the two groups, the damage and compensation of the war should be taken from the aggressor, from the zalim, bil adl, Bil-adl means by justly. The oppressor, the zalim, he has to pay all the losses and the damage. Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, he says that a nation wherein the rights of the weak are not taken from the strong, without a doubt has no sanctity and no value. Now here in this ayah, wherever there are instincts and deceit, and more advices and orders are needed. For example, here says bil adl iqsitu, and then yuhibbul muqsitin. So you find there is a dispute, so you step ahead with justice, you try to reconcile, and then iqsitu, with equality. Yuhibbul muqsitin, that the Almighty Allah, He loves those who are just. So that correction and islah, it is worthy where the right reaches its owner, otherwise the humiliating silence is deadly. Aslihu iqsitu. Now, beautiful. One of the examples to make this topic understand, the ayahs in particular, in the battle of Jamal, the battle of the camel, when the situation was deteriorating. Now, on one side we have Amirul Mu'mineen Ali alayhi salatu wassalam, and on the other side we've got Madame Aisha. Now here, Amirul Mu'mineen forbade them from starting the war, his people. Now the supporters of Aisha, they did not listen. Amirul Mu'mineen complained to the Almighty God and said, I'm trying my best, but they don't listen. Then he holds the Quran and he asks one of the companions that were with Amirul Mu'mineen, he says, is there anyone who could go and recite this particular ayah to them, to Aisha and her army? Which ayah? وَإِن طَائِفَتَانِ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ اقْتَتَلُوا فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا. This ayah number 9. A person named Muslim Mujashi'i, he says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I will recite that ayah for them. Imam says, both your hands will be cut off when you recite the ayah. He says that's the least that can be presented to the Almighty. Imam says you will be martyred for just reciting that ayah in that army of Aisha. He says, هَذَا قَلِيلٌ مِنْ فِي ذَاتِ اللَّهِ. This is the very least that can be presented to the Almighty God. He took the Quran and stood in front of Aisha's army and called the people, invited them towards returning to God and to not fight, and from avoiding this bloodshed and war. He recited that ayah. His right hand was cut. He held the Quran with his left hand and recited the ayah. His left hand was cut. He quickly held the Quran with his teeth. He continued reciting the ayah and they killed him. Now when this Shaheed was killed, Muslim Mujashi'i, here Amirul Mu'mineen, after his Shahadat, he ordered the attack on the army. So yes, first what you do is that you preach, and then you complete the argument by quoting the verses of Quran, and that also has to be done courageously. And then you strive for the goal until the last breath. So here now, the other thing that we learn from this beautiful ayah is justice, adl. 3 times it has been mentioned in this ayah. فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا بِالْعَدْلِ. So that is, you correct them, you patch them with justice. وَأَقْسِطُوا. That is again justice. That is, you have to maintain the justice between them. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُقْسِطِينَ. Allah loves the just. So 3 times it has been mentioned in this verse. Now some points will be mentioned here, and that is, regarding justice, creation, it is based on truth and justice. بِالْعَدْلِ قَامَتِ السَّمَاوَاتِ. Everything is based on justice. So at times the term wisdom that we have, hikmat, that is also applied on justice, on adl. The prophets, they were appointed so that the people, they have a just uprising. It says لِيَقُومَ النَّاسِ بِالْقِسْطِ, so that people, they rise justly. Justice is life and oppression is death. Al-adlu hayat wal-jawr mamat. And another hadith says that 1 hour of just behavior is better than 70 years of worship, in which all of these days you've been observing fasts and every night you were in worship. So all that 70 years of worship and fasting on one side, and observing justice for only 1 hour, says this is heavier, the 1 hour maintaining and observing justice. Now this applies everywhere, in your home, in your dwelling, with your family, with your children, with your family members. So it applies to every single component of our life. Inshallah, we'll shed some more light on that, at how far this justice and this adl goes. Says that the prayer of a just leader is answered, so he is mustajab, whoever is just and adil. So adil also, if you remember, it was mentioned, someone who performs all of the wajibat and he puts away all of the haram, so he is adil according to Sharia. In addition to that, in his day-to-day life, he observes and practices this justice. If he has, now one of the during the time of Amirul Mu'mineen Ali alayhi salatu wassalam, a lady with 2 children, she was there. One of the children, they started to cry, or both of them were crying. She had some dates with her. She gave one date to one child, another date to another child. She had a third one. She sliced it into 2, gave half and half to one of them. Amirul Mu'mineen got happy, said, that is good. That is justice that you had maintained. So that justice needs to be observed. If you have multiple children, it shouldn't be as such that we give so many dollars to one of them and nothing to the other, or a lot to him and lesser to the other. So that justice has to be maintained in children as well. So if justice is maintained among the people, the sky will send its sustenance. It will pour, in fact, its sustenance and rizq, and the earth also, it will send out all of its bounties and blessings and favors by the command of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Imam Kazim alayhi salatu wasalam, he says that if justice is established among the people, everyone will be needless. And he said that justice is sweeter than honey. Now today you see in the world, it's just a few. They say it's less than 100. 100 people who own that excessive and that surplus wealth, as a result of whom everyone else suffers. Out of these 8 billion people population on earth, so it's just a few, 100 families who are ruling the entire globe, the entire planet. That is zulm. As a result of them, everyone else suffers. Imam Kazim alayhi salam, he further says that, following the interpretation, that when he was doing the tafsir of this ayah, yuhyi al-ardha ba'da mawtiha. Yuhyi al-ardha ba'da mawtiha means the earth will revive, or will be given hayat and life after its death. So here Imam stated that God will raise men who will establish justice, and the earth will be revived by the establishment of this justice and adl. Or for example, in the statements of Hazrat Fatima salamullah alayha, she says, justice, it calms the hearts, and people get along with poverty easily, but they don't tolerate discrimination and injustice. Now, when we talk about justice, and it is in the school of the Anbiya alayhimus salam, The word justice is usually associated with the word law and injustice, etc. Usually when the law is not honored. In this case, now if people they look into the principles of law that we have today, they are made by human beings just like us. And a law, and it keeps on changing every day. And the lawmaker, he makes these laws based upon his own interest, his parties, or the whatever that hidden law he may be having, or due to his immature thoughts or limited information, or he is influenced by his own shahwat, his own instincts, racism, nationalism, threats, temptations, lusts, whatever you can say. All the laws that are made based upon this animalistic behavior of man. And a law that changes in every region. So here you find it's different. In other parts of the world, you go and see it's something else. So it changes over the time, changes over the history. And then those who are powerful, they've got extra rights, they've got rights to veto, etc. So a law made by a lawmaker who has all kinds of slips and defects and ugly traits, and he becomes the legislator himself. Now, can such a law be sacred? Can such a law be holy, dignified, which doesn't honor the dignity of human beings? But the laws of the prophets and the imams, they are the ones that the Almighty Allah, who has who has made these laws, and he has propagated them through the prophets and the imams, and that is the law of the Almighty Allah, who is adil, who is wise, who is alim, and who knows the well-being and the welfare of every being. And when the law of the Almighty God is made, it isn't as such that it's only that mankind who will benefit. No, the entire creation benefits from that divine law of the Almighty Allah. So here we have to see that the law that has been presented to us, that is justice that has been shown to us by the prophets, by the imams, is that justice that is going to be beneficial for us. Now I'll give you some examples. Justice, especially the Shia faith, is one of it's the only one that believes in this justice to this maximum, and that much of emphasis and honor has been given to adl in this faith. So justice, it's one of the main axes of Islam. We believe that God is just, God is adil. So our Tawheed, it is based on Adl. And then we've got all these rules in place. That is, a prophet has to be Adil. An Imam has to be Adil. So if a prophet is committing wrong or an Imam is committing sins, that Imam cannot be taken as an Imam. He cannot be a role model for us because Adl, Adalat, is lacking in him. So in us, God has to be Adil, the Prophet has to be Adil, the Imam has to be Adil, the Friday prayer leader, he has to be Adil, Marja' Taqleed, who you follow, he has to be Adil, the prayer leader, the Jamaat leader, he has to be Adil, judge, the Qazi, he has to be Adil, he has to be just, witnesses who see the moon, for example, they have to be Adil. If there's someone who doesn't practice and he comes and says that I've seen, we don't take his word. Or if there is a testimony or there is a witness that is required in cases of divorce, for example, so that has to be an adil. If he's not adil, his witness testimony will not be accepted. Or if a witness is required in the court, if he's seen any person doing any crime, if he is not adil, his word will not be accepted. So in our deen, adalat plays a very pivotal role, and it is that extremely important and necessary component of a being. So a judge has to be adil. Now even the treasurer, to whom this designation has been given, he has to be adil as well. And if we look into justice from a broader perspective, we will see that in all Islamic programs, the issue of justice, equality has been mentioned. Extreme behaviors we don't have. So justice in worship is to the extent that Hadith says that we go to chapter, it says Babul Iqtisad fil Ibadah. So in worship also there has to be a measure. It shouldn't be as such that all day doing nothing, just sitting on the prayer mat worshipping. Not permitted. So there has to be a moderation in worship. Justice in work, justice in entertainment, justice in love, justice in anger. So you have to, that also has to be maintained. Not that all the time angry. That is also not permitted. Justice between friends and foes. Justice in production and consumption. How much you produce, how much you consume. There has to be justice in there. Justice in encouraging children or rebuking children. There has to be justice in both of them. Justice in the distribution of the treasure and in the writing of the will. Sometimes people, they write a will and say that I want to give all of my assets and my belongings to this one child, and all the others, they suffer. That is injustice. So if he's writing a will, it has to be written justly, so that after him, after her, the children, they don't suffer. So justice among the spouses. Now, if someone has multiple spouses, multiple wives, the rule is such difficult that he has to maintain adalat even in the time slots that are maintained between the two wives. Now, if he has four, then it's going to be an extremely difficult situation. Now, there has to be a check-in time, that at what time he checks in wife number one's house. In the second wife, he cannot check in earlier. If he does, that is against adalat. If he stays more than that time, that is against adalat. So that check-in time, check-out time also has to be observed. What he gives to this one, what he gives to that one, that adalat has to be observed. Between the children, adalat has to be observed. That if he has so many children, then he's spending $20 in each one of them. So for everyone he should do, or something more or less, so that adalat has been maintained, and then they don't say that one is being given more. Now, in our deen, to a qazi, so much of an adalat has to be observed. The qazi, the judge, to him the instructions are given that when these two parties, they come to you, even the looks that you have, to the two parties, they should be equal. So if I look at this party 5 times, I should look at the other one also 5 times. So if I just stare at this one all the time and don't even look at the other one, that is against adalat. So adalat, justice, means that even in the looks, that adalat has to be maintained. So justice in judgment, and then justice in retribution. In qisas also it has to be justice. The example was mentioned, as Amirul Mu'mineen said, that a strike for a strike. Justice in war, justice in dealing with animals. Amirul Mu'mineen Ali alayhi salam, he instructed a person in charge of collecting zakat. Now, he says that if you ride an animal and you've taken it as zakat, you should do justice even with that animal. For example, if you had 4, you went to collect zakat, and the person, he had to pay 4 camels, for example, or 4 horses. And the distance that you had to travel from collecting those 4 animals as zakat to the treasury was, for example, 4 hours. And you've got 4 animals that you've collected, and it's a 2-hour journey. So you don't sit on one animal and you travel all the way on one animal. Here Imam says justice has to be observed, that you don't make one animal tired. You sit half an hour on every one of them. So in this 2-hour duration of journey, you have given equal burden to every animal, not that you have made one strive more and run more than the others. So that is that justice we have. Even in the olden days, when people they used to travel in groups and on animals, so they know that if we travel, it's going to take 10 days, and on the 10th day we will all arrive Mecca at a normal speed, at a normal pace. Now, if someone, Hadith says, if someone arrived and reached Mecca before others, before the others, whatever time, a few hours before, a few days before others, says the shahadat, the testimony of that person will not be accepted. Why? Because he has been a zalim, an oppressor on the animal, that he's made the animal run faster and get him to Mecca quicker, so means that he has made the animal tired. So Islam is that delicate and looks into things that deeply. So that is justice. In any case, justice in Islam is in everything, even in a child. Now, for example, if you come to a masjid, I've seen this quite a lot, you also definitely must have seen, that sometimes children, they want to sit in the first or the second row. And the grown-up comes and says, hey kid, get up, go and sit in the back. And moves the kid, and then he stands in the place of that child to offer his prayers. His namaz is batil, because that spot is a usurped spot. So that child has to leave the space himself, and then he can come and stand. Or you can request him, if he moves with his own will and desire, yeah, that's well and good, you can teach him. Otherwise, moving a child or moving children from their spots in masjids and then standing in their place to say prayers, that will make that namaz also problematic and batil. So that is justice that has to be observed to that max. Now, examples that we have from Quran regarding this adl and justice. Quran instructed those people of Hijaz who considered themselves to be privileged, and they separated themselves from other people. Quran instructed them to perform the Hajj in the same way like every other person. Now we've got all these luxury packs nowadays for Hajj and all that, and all these are against the teachings of Quran and Hadith, luxury packs and etc. So Quran instructed them to perform Hajj in the same way like every other person. He performs his rituals and his Hajj. Says Afidhu haythu afadha nas. So you just perform, you also be with the people, just like every other person is performing Hajj, you also perform your Hajj. So you cannot remove and separate yourselves from that general public that is against Adl. Now the rich, they came to the Prophet and the prophets and they used to say that, why don't you reject the poor? Give importance to the rich, the wealthy, the privileged people. Rasulullah in reply says, وَمَا أَنَا بِطَارِدِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, but I will not drive away those who have faith. Let them be poor. I can't do that. I can't drive away people just because of their poverty, and I cannot select and pick people because of their being wealthy and rich. The Holy Prophet in his last journey, he gathered people and said, people of any race and any tribe, wherever they be, whatever caste, creed, nation, all of them, they are equal. Some politicians, they came to Amir al-Mu'mineen and they said, Ya Ali, can you separate our share that we get from the public funds from the share of those who are poor and the slaves? And because after all, we are the prominent people, and we give more importance, we are more important in the society, we are the social elites. Because of these social elites, the foundation of your government will be strong. And when these social elites, they are given importance, they will be strong and they will not go towards Muawiyah. So Imam in reply says, do you want me to pay a ransom? And whoever wanted to stay with me can stay, whoever wants to leave, leave. And I'm not going to separate the two, that is the rich and the poor, the elite and the non-elite. So everyone is equal. And then he says that even if it was my personal wealth, I will definitely observe and distribute that with justice, whence you see that this is the wealth and the treasures of the Almighty God, and it has to be spent justly, wisely, and distributed equally. And then he says that now that I've taken the charge of this hukumat, I will take back all the extravagance that was done in the time before me, and all those monies and wealth that were seized or spent from the treasury for their personal gains, even if it was the dowry of their wives, or even if they had bought slaves with that wealth, I'm going to bring that back to the public funds and the treasury. So that is Amirul Mu'mineen. And the reason why Amirul Mu'mineen was killed was because of his justice. That justice of Amirul Mu'mineen, Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, was not able to be tolerated by them. Amirul Mu'mineen, he used to say that even if the property is mine personally, I will distribute that with justice. Now, one of the other riwayat, we see that the Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he says that the first one who goes to hell is a ruler who does not do justice, does not observe this adalat. Or in another quote, he says that if a person is the guardian of 10 people but does not act justly among those people, he will arrive on the day of judgment with his hands and feet tied. Now, these were some of the points that we learned from this beautiful ayah. Just one ayah, and so much of information is hidden and embedded in this beautiful ayah that the more we recite that ayah, the more we understand. And we ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala that never separate us from Quran and Ahlul Bayt, even for one moment ever. I'll repeat that ayah. وَإِن طَائِفَتَانِ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ اقْتَتَلُوا فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا فَإِن بَغَتْ إِحْدَاهُمَا عَلَى الْأُخْرَى فَقَاتِلُوا الَّتِي تَبْغِي حَتَّى تَفِيءَ إِلَى أَمْرِ اللَّهِ فَإِن فَاءَتْ فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا بِالْعَدْلِ وَأَقْسِطُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُقْسِطِينَ. If two groups of the faithful, they fight one another, so make peace between them. And if one of the parties of them aggresses against the other, fight the one which aggresses until it returns to the Almighty's ordinance. And then it returns. And when it returns, make peace with them fairly and do justice. Indeed, Allah loves the just. وَسُبْحَانَ رَبِّكَ رَبِّ الْعِزَّةِ عَمَّا يَصِفُونَ وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.